Welcome, everyone, to episode 28 of The Bunker Talk. I have a wonderful guest with us today. We're going to talk all things law and mindset and estate planning, all the kinds of things that everybody needs. Thank you so much, Lauren Klein from Flourish Law Group. How are you?
So good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
I'm so excited. Off camera, we were talking about how passionate I am about what you guys do. I think that if I wasn't in this and I had that experience that I had with my family, maybe I would have just done law.
Yeah, it's not too late.
No, it's
if you
not.
Want to go to law school.
Tell everybody what it is that you do, the area of law that you practice, and why. Why specific? Why did you get into that area?
Absolutely. So I'm a trust and estates attorney and a tax attorney. So the way that I got into this area was actually by accident. I was a finance major when I was an undergrad, but right around the time that the whole world was going crazy in 0809, that's when I was graduating. And I was interning at one of the big, brokerage houses. And they said, you might want to do something else for a little while. The world's probably not really in the best spot to be starting in finance. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to law school. I had always thought that I might go to law school. Didn't know what I would do, thought maybe I would still go into finance or maybe I would start a business. But I just wanted to feel like I had an understanding of the law because I thought it would help me. Mm-hmm. And it really has. So as I'm going through law school, trying to figure out maybe real estate, that's when the foreclosure market was like super hot. So I did some of that work. I ended up taking a business associations class, which is like corporations, LLCs, stuff like that. And it was taught by a tax professor. And I did really well. I got the highest grade. And he's like, I think you should take my tax class in the summer. And I was like, ew, no, tax.
Summer?
No, I'm going to Spain.
We're partying.
I'm going to Spain, study abroad, peace out. So he roped me in the fall. I took the tax class and I fell in love. I would have never guessed. It sounded so dry. I hated accounting in college, but it was very much code-based and learning and planning and creativity in a code-based kind of world. And that's how my brain works. I like to have like more black and white and then to build from there when it comes to the way my brain works. So really just fell in love with it and ended up getting my tax LLM, which is a additional degree that you get after your JD. So went to UF, got a master's in taxation and that's how I started my law career.
Wow. So then how does the estate planning wills trust play into that?
Yeah, so it's funny because what I do now is very similar to what I would have been doing in finance. So life is hilarious.
Yeah, it's full circle.
Full circle. So I'm an estate planning attorney and probate attorney, but there's tax consequences. There's tax consequences to everything, literally everything. So in the estate planning world, there's tax consequences if someone dies and they have significant assets. There's tax consequences when someone either receives an asset in life versus when they receive it in death. There can be a huge benefit to inheriting because you get a step up in basis, meaning let's say, you inherit a house in South Florida that your grandparents bought in the 70s for like $90,000. Now it's worth $1.5 million. If you inherit it, you get the value on the day that you inherit it. So if you turn around and sell it the next day, you pay no tax. No tax. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that people just don't realize there's tax implications. There's also business planning. We were talking a little bit about this before. If you inherit a business, there's a lot of things to how you structure it, or even during life, how you structure it. It's all part of the planning, business planning, estate planning. It's all kind of integrated together in many, many ways. So that's how the tax really comes into it.
Yeah, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go to school for that stuff. You have to do everything that you did. It's so complex. And I think that the average person believes that these things, your services, your expertise are for rich. They're for the wealthy people. But I would say that, obviously people that have a lot of assets need the support, but I would say that the average consumer that has, a couple kids, has a house, maybe an investment property, or has elderly parents, like it is devastating what happens if there's not the appropriate stuff in place. Yes. We talked a little bit about off camera, like even children with special needs. Like when you have those circumstances, it is so important to talk about it, plan for the worst case scenario, right? People don't understand. People don't think about the fact that when your kid turns 18 and they go to college, like and if something happens to them, you're not calling the hospital and they're not going to talk to you. Doesn't matter that they're your baby. It doesn't matter that your child would approve it. Well, they're not awake to do so. And you're not going to get, like, that is so serious. And I feel like people don't talk about that just for the average consumer, right? Like, I mean, how many times do you also hear about these celebrities that pass away and don't have it done, which is also shocking. But it's like, what do you think it is? Why do you think people are afraid to do this stuff?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a lack of education. I mean, I think there should be a class,
100%,
a personal finance class starting in high school where you talk about these things, because estate planning is just an extension of financial planning. People think of it as this separate thing that's only for the rich or only for the elderly, and it doesn't impact them. It impacts everything. And even if it doesn't impact you in present day, it will at some point impact you or your family. So I think it's a lack of education, just not understanding, because we talk to people all day long and you just see the light bulbs going off as we explain things. And in some ways it's complicated. In other ways, it's not that complicated. And so you just see them like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. I didn't know that. And then I think there's a little bit of fear, of course, of dealing with death and talking about death and incapacity. I mean, that's not fun.
Right.
But my law partner and I really try to make it as enjoyable as possible and as clear as possible and as normal. One of our favorite compliments, we get this a lot, and people almost say it like apologetically, like they're going to offend us. They're like, I don't feel like I'm talking to lawyers right now. I feel like I'm talking to a friend who's just explaining something to me in a way that makes sense. And we're like, that
is a compliment. Absolutely.
It's absolutely, that's our goal. That was one of the reasons we started our firm, because I've worked in various law firms, big law firms, small. It's all about ego. It's all about sounding smart. And it's not about, and sometimes it's just, some people don't know how to explain something. They're good at it, but they can't explain it.
And I think that it's in the area of law where you are, that human touch, that ability to make it a comfortable space is critical, because these are hard conversations. They're emotionally charged conversations, especially when there's blended families and you're talking about whose kids are getting what, or who's going to be the one, what side of who's the person taking care of our children if something happens. These are very emotionally, sometimes divisive conversations. So they had to be, it needs white glove service from an emotional standpoint.
Yes.
It's like, it needs to be an emotionally intelligent conversation over a law, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's get comfortable. Let's talk about these hard things and then make your decisions. I mean, I don't know if that's the way you do it, but that's the way it feels like you do it, right? Where it's human first, and it helps that you're a mom, I'm sure, because you understand that a mom making these decisions for her children is hard. It's hard.
Absolutely. We always tell people, look, we're just normal people. Just let us just explain everything to you. We're here to guide you and help you. You get to make the decisions. You are the boss, but our job is to explain everything so you can make an informed decision and not just have if you have a document, which most people don't, an estate plan, most people don't. If you do, we don't want it to be cookie cutter. We want it to be specifically tailored to you and your family. And we want to meet with you on an annual basis, because if you acquire a new asset, if your child, if you find something else about them, maybe they are diagnosed, on the spectrum or something, or whatever it is, it's life. Life is life, and all the time, like, things happen, things come up. You need to make sure that your plan continues to support you. That's so important.
And the consequences of the decisions that they make, right? Sometimes because they are emotional decisions, it's okay, well, that's fine, but let me tell you what can happen.
Right.
That's critical too.
Right.
What can you give us and I know that this is not like legal advice or anything like that, but just like, what is the difference? Like, I feel like when I was younger, I remember people talking about wills and like, that was it. That was enough. Yeah. Why is a will not enough?
So I think to answer that question, I need to explain one of the main reasons people should do estate planning, and it's to avoid the probate process. So, and then I'll kind of explain a will versus a trust. So the probate process is essentially if you pass away owning something in your individual name. So not a jointly held asset, not an asset that you have like a transfer on death, like you go to your bank or your brokerage and you name someone. If you don't have that, or if it's not in a trust, if it's just in my individual name and I never did any of those things, which happens all the time, it has to go in order to get to the people who are either named in my will, because a will does not do anything really. It doesn't avoid any of those things. It has to go before a judge. An attorney in Florida must be hired. It's not an option for most probates. Must be hired. So it's going to cost more than the estate plan. And then it takes time. It can take anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. Yeah. Especially if you're in Miami. Miami, it takes forever and ever and ever. And so I think people think, oh, I have a will, I'm good. But the will is important. It still names who administers your estate. If you have minor children, it names who the guardians are. If you have a preference of, cremation, burial, I want to be a diamond, I want to be a tree. We have some really cool things with our clients. That goes in there. It's still important. But the will, it can say who gets what, but it doesn't avoid probate. There's other ways to avoid probate besides a trust, but the will on its own doesn't not. The trust is like a backpack. So let's say you want to name the trust as a beneficiary. It's a backpack where you put your assets, and then the trust is almost like a contract. It's a set of guidelines. If my spouse survives me, he or she receives it. How do they receive it? Outright? Do they receive it in trust? If my spouse predeceases me, who receives it? My children. Is it outright or is it in trust? Why would we want to keep it in trust? Maybe to protect if they get divorced, or maybe they might have a taxable estate. We can talk about that a little bit. Or maybe we just want to make sure if they get sued, the creditors can't access those funds as easily as they could if it was in their bank account. There's so many little nuances, and it isn't that complicated once we really break it down and we make it real life. Maybe you want to put guardrails in place, like my child can be their own trustee at age 25, but I want to make sure before they have access, they go to college, they get a job, they're responsible, productive. Right. You don't want to give them too much, but you don't want to give them nothing. So it's very tailored to the family and their goals and their level of wealth. And again, you don't have to be wealthy, but the wealth is a factor in what you want to do with the money.
Even, again, back to the wealth part, like imagine just the person that has the one home, right? And it's your children. You worked all of your life to get that. Yeah. And then something happens, you pass away, and then your family loses it, right? Like that's your legacy, and it's just gone because someone, and I do agree with you. I do think it's a vast lack of education. Yeah. In your sector of the industry. And this is the first time that I've heard that piece about the will, and that makes sense. It's almost just like the will is giving permissions, but the trust is different. It's almost the if then logic of like technology space. Like, okay, but there's so many scenarios that can play out. Right.
And you don't need a trust. So let's say we have an example of a client. This happens all the time. A client comes in, their spouse has passed away. They're in their 60s, 70s. They have a house, they have a brokerage and bank accounts, and all their children are adults. They're not in high liability professions, and we're not looking at a taxable estate, which right now in the U.S., if you're a U.S. citizen or resident, you can give away or die with about 13.61 million. So a very, very high number. That number might go down depending on what happens in the world of politics. So who knows, to about 7 million per person at the end of next year. So it's still a lot of money, but a lot more people have 7 million than 13. Right. So let's say, going back to that example, we're not worried about a taxable estate, and they say, do I need a trust? We say, no, probably not, unless there's another reason that we need to delve into. You can still avoid probate. You don't need the trust. You can still do planning. There's deeds that you can do on the home to make sure that the property goes to someone called an enhanced life estate deed without probate. You can go to your brokerage account, brokerage house. You can go to your bank. You can name your children as the beneficiaries. Those steps will also avoid probate. But if you want to put the if-then guardrails in place, that's when the trust comes into play. Or if you have minor children, minor children cannot inherit. You need a trust in case something happens to you. You need it. If we have clients with minor children, we would never not recommend a trust because it just doesn't make sense.
Right. It's so much. It's so much, and I'm everyone needs to talk to Lauren. It's so important to do this, to have these conversations, to protect what your whole family, what you've given your life to. All we do is work for these assets and to build legacies for our families, and I hate the idea of someone, and then the nasty part, right, of like the fighting amongst children, amongst it literally destroys families. It destroys families, and it's so sad that it's just like, if somebody, if people understood that all of this can be resolved early, and avoid all of these headaches, and it's just.
You can't always completely avoid it, but by being clear on who gets what and how, and if the circumstances weren't, explaining everything to your children before you go. Because I think what happens so often is people, they get hurt.
Absolutely.
They get hurt. And that's what it really boils down to. People feel mistreated or something is unfair, and that's what leads to the fighting. And I think if everything had just been laid out clearly, not again, you can't always avoid it, but or if maybe one child gets the business and the other gets an equalizing amount of money or whatever it is, just having the forethought and doing the planning can avoid a lot.
Let's talk about business. So let's talk about your other projects that you're involved in. I know you're super passionate about education in general. Yeah. I know you're passionate about helping law students and helping new attorneys. And I know that you're passionate about, especially women making money.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Yes.
So tell us about those projects.
So I have a community called the Wealthy Lawyer Squad, and it was really born out of my own journey through personal finance and personal development. So when I went to law school, I had no one in my family who was an attorney. I have some people in my family who graduated college, but not everyone. So my family is not like a family that goes to a secondary education. That's new for me. And so when I graduated and then started climbing up the ranks in my career, I was just clueless. I had no one to ask. I had nowhere to turn. And I think, especially in law school, like you want to look like you know what's going on. So everyone's acting like they know what's happening when everyone's just like scared out of their minds. So flash forward about 5 years into my career, I got an opportunity to join one of the biggest law firms in the country and the biggest private wealth services group in the nation. And I thought to myself, one, I never thought I would get this opportunity, so I didn't feel very worthy of that opportunity. I was very scared. And I also thought to myself, if I'm so stressed out at this smaller firm, how am I going to survive at this bigger firm? And then the third part was, now I'm almost doubling my salary. What am I going to do with that money? I want to make sure that I'm putting that money to work and that I'm not just going to spend it all go out and buy a new house and a new car. I love nice things. Nothing wrong with nice things. But doing it without intention and doing it to the point where you can't pivot and you are stuck with those golden handcuffs, I didn't want that. And so I had a long drive. So I would just listen to personal finance. I started meditating. I started working out regularly. I started listening to real estate investing podcasts, reading books about how our brains worked. And I just wanted to be okay. But what ended up happening was it was making me a better attorney, a better person, happier, more balanced, and I just started feeling good, and I started feeling more confident. And even the people I was working with at the big firm, they're like, well, you were just like, what's going on? We see something in you. And I was like, well, I'm meditating and I'm listening to personal development podcasts, and I have crystal. I mean, I didn't say the crystals part because they would think I was insane, but it was starting to really work. And I just had this aha moment of, wow, if we work on our brains and we work on our money, we can figure out where we want to go in life, and we can have autonomy and make decisions and make sure that we don't just get stuck on a track and wake up 20 years later and say, oh, how did I get here? I didn't even want to be here. And so flash forward a few years, COVID hits. I'm sitting in my home office because the office was shut down. I'm working millions of hours a day because the firm cut our pay to try to retain cash reserves. And I was pregnant. So of course my super feeling like I had to prove myself went into overdrive. I'm like, well, I'm a woman in law and now I'm pregnant. So now I need to outwork everyone even more to show that I'm worthy of this seat and this position. And I just had this aha moment because I was listening to all these life coaches. I'm like, why don't we have this in the law? Why don't we have digital courses for people to figure out, what law school is like, what being a lawyer is like, and talking about money and mindset? Why don't we have this in an industry where mental health is abysmal? And we were talking about this before. Some studies have shown only 5 to 10% of lawyers are millionaires. That is insane because so many, not every lawyer is a high earner, but so many are. So many. And so the Wealthy Lawyer Squad was born. I just created it in my home office, super pregnant during COVID, because I was like, well, I don't want to bake sourdough. I don't bake.
I was baking banana bread.
It sounded fun, but like in theory, and then I would go to do it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, what can I do with, all this time that I'm by myself? And that's where it created. And it's evolved over the years. Now I have a program for law students and a program for new lawyers. We have a money and mindset book club. We have my dear friend who's an attorney and a yoga teacher teaching yoga. We're doing retreats.
I love
it's just, I'm speaking at law schools. It's just, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's continuing to evolve. And I just think it's important, especially for women. Originally it was only for women. And then I was like, well, the law schools, I don't want them to feel like, they're not giving it to everyone. But of course it mainly attracts women. Yeah.
Can we talk about what you said about the pressure that you put on yourself, or maybe, I don't know if it's perceived pressure or it was actual pressure on,
but probably both.
Yeah. On being pregnant and feeling like you had to outwork. Mm-hmm. How, what advice do you have for someone that feels that way? Like, how do you think you were able to get out of it? Do you still struggle with that?
So that is a very interesting question. And I actually just had a whole conversation about this with someone yesterday. I think a big part of it is that we still live in a patriarchy, mm-hmm. and the societal constraints don't necessarily celebrate motherhood. They don't celebrate being a woman in her power. And I think that for a long time, I thought maybe it was me, that I was the problem, that I had to overwork and I had to prove to everyone that I was the best. And what I realized over time was I can't make anyone see me and see my power. They'll see it or they won't. And I can't change society. And so it's one of the reasons that I ended up leaving Big Law, because I just saw that I don't feel supported and I don't feel safe in this environment that people are going to support me and mentor me and be there to advocate for my pay and for rising through the ranks. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I could do this on my own better. And it's scary to go out on your own. It's scary I was making a lot of money to get rid of that paycheck as a mom of, at that point, a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old with a husband in law enforcement who makes, he makes okay money, but I've always been the breadwinner. But I said, I know that I can build something amazing, and I still am not making what I was making, but I know I will far exceed that. And I will do it in a way that feels aligned with who I am. And no one has control over my pay except me and life
Right,
circumstances, sure. And my law partner. And so it's kind of a really roundabout way to answer that question. So if there's someone listening who, whether they're in law or not, whether they're a mother or not, but if they're a woman that just feels like sometimes the world isn't there to support us, just find a community, find people to talk to, find people who have gone through what are going through or have in the past, and just build your own tribe. You know what I mean? And whether that is within a company or by going out on your own, whatever it looks like, I don't know. There was a call I was on recently. I can't remember if it was the Daily Drip or something else, but someone said, women used to be oracles. We used to be like so well respected, and something happened along the way. And not to say that we're not, or that there aren't men who are allies, but sometimes it's just, you got to build your own table. You really do. And it's kind of unfortunate, and it's also great in a lot of ways.
I think that the way you articulate all of this is really, really powerful, because especially I've had quite a few female attorneys on the show, and the sentiment is always the same about the big law. And my industry is extremely male dominated as well, especially in the ownership position, and in the production roles. They're usually not women. The women are always the CSRs, gathering payments, answering phones. But in leadership, in production, where those positions are usually 100% commission, there's not many women in it. And if they are, they're aggressive. They're not referenced kindly, right? But in ownership, it's the percentage is very low. And I feel the same way. I feel like in mine, I'm very fortunate. I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming obviously your husband supports you.
He is.
Your father probably
incredible.
Does. You
No, he does.
I think that either you're breaking the mold because there was no support, or you kind of just always had, like, for example, do you have siblings?
I do.
Girls or boys?
One younger brother.
So my brother is older, right? And it's just 4 of us. And my dad always, like, it was a level playing field. Like, there wasn't any difference on what opportunities I got because I was a girl. Now, I wasn't allowed to, like, sleep over people's houses because I was a girl.
Yeah. Well,
he got to do whatever. Like he could go away for the weekend younger than
that.
I could. Yeah, of course. He was right. They were right.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, like I had to wait a little bit longer in age to be able to go out for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
That stuff. But even this opportunity, my dad said it's equal for you guys. Whoever wants it takes it. And I did. My brother didn't want it.
Wow.
So it's interesting to me how even from a young age, I think that those things shape the decisions that take courage eventually.
Yeah. It was kind of the opposite in my house. It wasn't a situation where you're a girl, you can't do it, but there wasn't a lot of like, go out there and be whatever you want to be. Like it was almost, I don't know, my childhood was a little interesting. It was almost like a fear. Just play it safe. Play it safe. Don't go to law school. Law school is going to be too expensive. You know, just get a good, safe job and start making money. But it wasn't an option for me. I had really big dreams from the get-go. Like from 3 years old, I was very different from the rest of my family. And they support me, and now they're so proud and they're so happy that I did it. And they're one of the reasons I'm able to do everything I do and have 2 little kids. So shout out to my parents for sure. But it was almost like a thing where I'm like, you think I can't do it? I'm going to go do it. I'm going to tenfold it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Can you tell us what it felt like to leave that salary and go out on your own? The fear, if you can try to describe the fear.
So,
or if there was fear.
It's interesting. There was fear, but not at the moment that I left the job. So when I got pregnant during COVID and was overworking and people pleasing to the max, something very interesting happened. While I was pregnant, it was fine. It was great. Everything was gravy. It wasn't until I gave birth and I took my maternity leave, which is part of your compensation, that's when things went off the rails. And so I knew in that moment that this position, this track was not going to support me, and it was not aligned with who I was. And so I was already in therapy. I started therapy before I got pregnant to try to resolve a lot of the childhood stuff before I brought children into the world. Highly recommend that. So I started talking to my therapist. I'm like, I think I want to start my own firm. I don't know when that's going to happen. And I also started focusing on my money more and my wealth and making sure that that was all buttoned up and I had multiple streams of income. But I started playing with the idea of going out on my own and not having that big salary and how that would feel and what that would look like and feeling worthy of my whole thing was, who the heck am I to start a law firm? Who the heck am I? And so we worked a lot through, who am I? Why can't I start a law firm? And really focusing on those limiting beliefs and busting them, which sounds very simple, but it took years. So by the time I left the job, I had already lived it out in my head in therapy and worked through it and built up those mental muscles. So by the time I left, I don't want to say there wasn't any fear, especially like a few months in, it was summer and it was quiet. And I was like, this is not good. So I don't want to say like I just never had fear, but it was just moments. It wasn't like an overarching like, oh my God, holy crap, what did I do? Right. It was just in moments. There was moments. But there's something, it's almost like what athletes, like they practice physically and mentally before they go into a game. I practiced it before it actually happened. And we had rental properties. We had a lot of money in the bank and a lot of money in the market. And so I knew we would be okay. And my partner, the same thing. She had saved and saved. We both lived as if we were still law students for many years after we graduated. We didn't go out and immediately spend it all. And so we had a safety net. And all of that helped a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, business is hard enough, right? And without having a cushion of money for the emergencies or for the month that's the summer month that's slow, I mean, the stress of that is crippling. Yeah. So can you talk to me about that? This is so interesting to me. I'm fascinated by you, by the way, because like we're both a part of the Daily Drip, but we've never really like sat down and like talked like this. And obviously I know what you do and you're super successful. And I know I knew you did estate planning and the wills and all that, but I know you're focused on the money mindset stuff. So I don't know that I've had anybody on the show that talks about it so openly too. And I feel like as women, we don't talk about money either.
Yeah. And we need to because it's one of the reasons that there is a wage gap, and it's not the only reason. I don't want to put the onus on us, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
I will tell anyone what I'm making, what I've made, no issue, because I want people to know. I want people to know.
when you say that you practiced mentally, what that looked like, can you describe that? Like, is it as simple and as basic as visualizing yourself running a business or making those tough decisions? What does that whole thing, the mindset, the visualization look like?
So I did a few things. One was just talking to my therapist about it and writing out all the reasons why I felt like I wasn't worthy, and then going through why I was. And some of that was actual things I had accomplished, but some of it was also just internal, who I was starting to believe that I was or that I could be. Then there was visualization. It was sitting down, meditating, and envisioning, what does my life look like in 1 year? What does it look like in 5 years? What do I want it to look like? And just being in that, this is going to get like really woo-woo, just being in that energy, because anything that we can think of, it exists. It exists in some realm. This is really woo. It exists in some realm. There is a possibility of it. And so being in that energy ahead of time and living as if I was already that person allows you to, in the present time, make decisions and act as if you are. And it does sound very out there, but it really isn't when you start to understand how our brains work. Our brains are just computers. And so often we are just on the programming that we were given at birth and through childhood and through our life experiences. And we just accept that as if that is what it is. And we can't change it, which is, once you realize that's not true, it is the most freeing thing in the planet, in the world. And so I would just visualize who I was becoming. I would write letters to myself. So 5 years out, Lauren, here's where I live. Here's who I'm spending my time with. I own a law firm with my best friend, which I now do. Here's where I'm traveling. Here's what I'm wearing. Here's what I'm eating. Here's what I'm driving. Here's what my kids are doing. Here's what my husband and I go to the gym together on Fridays, which we'll do that soon when the second one's in school. And just embodying who that was. And then the practical side of things, like the money, really making sure that, one, I talk to my money and I think of my money as a friend. In our Mindset and Money book club, we just read You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. And in the book, she gives an example of someone writing a letter to their money. And it was like, if you have an unhealthy money mindset, it's like, there's never enough of you. You come to me and then you immediately leave me. I hate you and I'm scared of you. And it's like, wow, if you wrote that to somebody, like, you would seem like some crazy, like, codependent, like, person. Instead, if you can, like, I love you. There's so much of you. You're always here. I love to earn you. I love to share you. The way that you think about your money impacts every decision and everything that you do in your life. And it is so closely tied with psychology. It is insane. It's why the stock market goes up and down, because people get scared, people get excited. It's I don't know. I'm very fascinated by this topic, if you can tell.
No, it's great. It's great because, again, people don't like to talk about it for whatever reason. And I think I read Think and Grow Rich, and it talks about
a good one.
About this stuff and about your money mindset and about how you think about money. And I told my friend recently that the more I've been working on myself and professionally and getting these opportunities that we were just talking about, I feel like it's wild. And you say it's like woo woo, and it is, but it's works. Clearly, you're a testament to that. But I told her recently, I said, I feel like all the cliches that we heard growing up, like, they're true, and I'm seeing them becoming true. Like the importance of your self-talk, of how you talk to yourself. And I kind of have self-deprecating humor. And I do too. I enjoy it. I love when other people do. Like, it's fun. Like, I'll poke fun at myself first before anybody else gets to. But I mean, it's been 40 years of that. Do I think that maybe has had an effect on me? Probably. Yeah. Right. Okay. Maybe 30 years. Right. And at 10 I started, but like, how many years have we heard the way you talk to yourself matters, the way you think about yourself matters, right? And it's like, yeah, right, whatever, but
it's everything.
It does
everything, because it influences what you do in your life, the decisions that you make, the people that you spend time with, the opportunities that you take. I mean, when I was in law school, the opportunities that I didn't take because I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it, like the jobs I didn't apply for, because I'm like, well, they're not going to hire me. So I stopped myself before I was ever given a chance to maybe be rejected or accepted to that role, whatever it might be. It impacts everything. And the way that I look at life at the end of the day, it's just a game. It's all a chess game. And this is also woo-woo. I read one book. My therapist recommended it. Oh, what was it called? It was about, this is like really out there, that we are simultaneously living on like an unlimited amount of universes. So there's a Ciara and a Lauren right now who live in like Bali and are doing something. And there's like science behind this that we might be, I don't know. It's a little crazy, but it helps. I don't know if it's true or not, but it helps me because if I'm really stressed out or if I have a big decision or whatever, I'm like, well, there's another Lauren who is on the moon right now and she's, you know, drinking wine on the moon or something crazy. I don't know. Right. And I'm like, it's all a game. It's all a game and it's meant to be enjoyed and it's meant to be played and to love your life. And it takes away a lot of that stress and the pressure and the anxiety. Cause I'm like, you know what, at the end of the day, like we can't take this that seriously.
Oh, and we're not taking it with us.
And I think a lot of people think about death because I talk about it all day in a very scary way, but I'm like, well, I'm going to go anyway. I might as well do all the things I want to do while I'm here. I mean, I hope I'm like 110, you know, in my bed or skydiving or something, but it's all a game. Like just have fun with it. Do whatever you want.
And I think that having the topic of mindset is just so powerful, like you said, in all the decisions and everything like that. But when you're aware of your mindset and you're working on it, I think it's like it is, and athletes especially have it locked down, right? Like they understand the power of the mindset in the physical game.
Yeah, and no one thinks it's weird when athletes do it.
Right.
Like it's normal. It's normalized in that industry.
Right. Which is fascinating too, right? Why only in that industry? But I guess because it manifests physically in their performances. Yeah. Ours doesn't, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting. But I feel like it is an advantage to living intentionally, right? When look at the difference. You said, you know, during law school, you thought you were someone, and so you limited yourself to fast forward however many years. You have now worked on yourself, said yes to opportunities, said yes. What I heard you say was when you started, it was who is Lauren to own a law firm. And now you are teaching and helping law students and new lawyers, right? So it went from who am I to do this to you just stepped into it and built something.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I still all the time I'm like, who am I to be teaching this? You know, because we're human. We're human beings. And we always have to kind of go back to this is who I am and work on it. The work is never over, which if it was, it would be boring.
Right. Well, and I think that also that means too that it is, I think even personally from the last 2 years I've had where I've just been saying yes, yes, yes. I was a person that was always at a desk. Like I never stepped out, and I have a pretty big personality, but I couldn't get up in front of anybody. I mean, I told you I have a teleprompter. I still use it. You know, like
that's genius.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to use the hacks, but that whole thing of who am I to get that opportunity to do that. It's funny because, I just got a huge opportunity to interview the CEO of Progressive. And one of the things that I asked her was in all the careers, she started in claims. And I said to her, how did you level up? What did you do professionally to level up with each opportunity and with each promotion? And she told a story about how she got offered chief of human resources and she had never done human resources a day in her life. Zero experience, didn't go to school for it. And she goes, I can't do that. There's people that go to college for that have degrees in human resources. But everyone around her was telling her, Trisha, I think you'd be great at it. And she goes, you know what? My advice to women that are starting or getting opportunities that they don't feel worthy of is see yourself how other people see you. And I was blown away because I struggle, and I said I struggle with that. She goes, well, most people do, but everyone around me believed I could do it. So why not? Right. And guess what? If it wouldn't have worked out, okay. It's also okay.
Right. It's okay.
And I think that having your mindset worked on also allows for the failures. Yeah. They're not as devastating.
Right. Failure is a very good thing. In the moment, it doesn't feel good, but like all the equipment we're using, electricity, our phones, like none of that would have been created if airplanes, if people hadn't failed and failed and failed and eventually created something incredible. You know, so you can't be afraid to fail because that is how you will grow.
Yeah.
And you will fall flat on your face and you will feel like an idiot. And that is okay because we're human.
And we're trying. At least we're trying.
Trying
right.
is so much better than just playing it safe and never trying. And then, you know, I read a study recently that one of the main things people say on their deathbed is, I wish I would have lived authentically and I wish I would have tried. And I wouldn't have worried about I wouldn't have worried about what all the people thought about me because they're all dead anyway now at this point. Like it didn't even matter anymore. Right. It didn't even matter.
I think that's why it's so important what you're talking about too. And to actively do it, right? Not in passing, not I watched an Instagram reel that made an impact on me. Let me save it. No, like actually dedicate time to working on your mind because it really shapes your perspective. Honestly, it shapes your friends. You might realize that you want to go somewhere and they're holding you back. Your relationships, maybe it's a career change. All of those things where if you just live every day in your routine, you do what you do, you wake up, you're a hamster on the wheel.
And you think you don't have a choice.
You think you don't have a choice. Maybe you just need to get on a different wheel. But if you don't think, if you don't take the time to work on actually most people don't sit down and say, what does my life look like in 5 years? I would venture to say most don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe people just don't think about it. And also they think, well, it wouldn't matter if I did that because everything is happening to me anyway, and I don't have control. Or if I dream too big and it doesn't happen, I'm going to be disappointed.
Right.
And I can just keep on the same track and not be disappointed.
That's a big piece of it too. I think the fear of disappointment, or obviously, like we said, the embarrassment piece of it. I'm so fascinated by all of this. I mean,
I could talk about this all day, every day. It's like this secret code to the universe that is, it's not even, It shouldn't be a secret.
Right.
It really shouldn't. That
is so good. Talk to me about the millionaire piece and lawyers. That statistic is also, I think it's the media that portray, in my mind, even before I recently, maybe about a year and a half ago already, I joined them as Esquire, and I'm surrounded by more attorneys than I ever have been. And I thought to myself, man, I had such a misconception about attorneys, especially women attorneys. I think maybe because of what's portrayed on television, right? All women attorneys are extremely aggressive, and they're just, I think that society, attorneys are portrayed a certain way, and it could not be further from the truth when I have been around so many of them. Can you talk about that as far as like the space that you're filling with these courses and the support and the help? Yeah. Talk to us about that imagery of the image of attorneys and the level of success that's perceived.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I don't know that a poor attorney exists, right? Yeah. Because of just the image. No, it just equals success.
I mean, even for me, when I went into law school, I had no idea really what it was going to cost. I didn't know anything about student loans, but I just assumed, well, if I'm a lawyer, I'm going to be rich. So who cares? Who cares what my student loan? I was talking about this yesterday with someone, like she was in the same boat. She's like, well, I'm going to be rich. Doesn't matter. Right. Doesn't matter. I'm taking out $300,000 worth of student loans. Who cares? I'll pay it off.
Right.
I mean, the student loan thing is a piece of it. You know, when you look at the price of school, law school, other schools too, in the U.S. versus what the salaries have done. I mean, the law school prices have gone up way faster than the salaries. And I mean, that's in so many industries, and inflation's crazy. But I think that is a part of it. But I think another part of it is the misconception about what you might earn. I didn't know what a lawyer earned when I went into law school. So I think that's a piece of it, doing the research on what can you earn, what type of areas pay different things, public versus private, going in-house, working for a law firm, PI versus tax versus real estate. But I think the piece about the only 5 to 10% of lawyers being millionaires that I just found out, I was at a networking event and that was the topic of conversation. I was like, wow.
It's mind-blowing.
I knew it wasn't that high because one of the things that happened early to me, there were two things that happened to me in my career that changed my perception of money and lawyers. One, when I was a baby lawyer, I was doing an estate plan for this fancy hotshot West Palm attorney with custom suits and a nice house and a fancy car. And when you do estate planning for someone, you look at their assets. And I had more in my bank account than he did. And I was a second-year attorney. I was maybe making $80,000 at that point, plus paying off my student loans. And I just thought, is this an outlier or is this the norm? And the more that I learned about people, I learned that it was more the norm than not. Something else happened to me when I was in the big law firm. So all the partners there are making $700,000, $1 million, $4 million more a year. And I was casually talking to one of them, and he said to me, he was complaining that another partner had retired early, which I think was at like 55. And he's like, that must be nice. He has family money. I wish I could do that. And I said it in a nice way, but I was like, oh, can't you? And I was like truly curious. I'm like, hey, he's like, no. And I don't know his financial situation, but I just thought to myself, if you've been making X amount of dollars for 25 years, 30 years, why can't you? Is it lifestyle? Is it mindset where you just feel like if you stop, all your money is going to disappear? Is it an identity thing? And it was just those two moments were such aha moments to me where I'm like, oh, it's not about the money. It's about what you do with the money. It doesn't matter what your gross income is. It matters what you do with it. Do you save it? Do you spend it? Do you invest it? Do you use that money to create more opportunities? Are you paying attention how tax efficient you are? I think a lot of people don't. They just, especially lawyers, they get so in the grind of the day-to-day, taking care of their clients and trying to seem cool, that they don't actually like pay attention to the money and keep their eye on the ball.
I think that you literally just described the perfect scenario in your scenario number 2 of your aha moment of why the mindset is so important. Mm-hmm. Because imagine making close to anything. Oh, I mean, for some people, 200,000, 300,000 is life-changing. Imagine 7, 8, $1 million a year, and you feel like your salary has you in a chokehold and you can't retire. Mm-hmm. So for sure, it is mindset, intentionality in learning about your money, seeing every dollar as a soldier. Yeah. Is it working for you, or is it just like nice to see it in the bank? That you need to make a course for public schools and teach this.
Yeah. I think it's so needed.
This literally can change like generational wealth.
100%.
When people talk about this, and nobody does.
I know.
That is such a powerful. I'm glad that you said that, because now it makes sense. That was the fuel of being so intentional with that.
And to bring it full circle, the generational wealth so ties into the estate planning, because the estate planning affects what happens to the money when it transfers. Mm-hmm. Is it transferring to the right people? Is it getting there without probate fees and attorney fees? Right. Is it getting there without litigation? Is it staying in a nice trust so it can grow outside of that $13 million amount we talked about? If you keep it in trust for your kids, it never enters into that line item. So that money can grow and it never gets added to that. So if your child goes off and becomes wealthy, all of that money is excluded from the tax base.
Nobody knows that.
No one knows that.
This is so fascinating. It's so fascinating.
I'm glad you find it fascinating.
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, I'm almost on 30 interviews, and this is our third family business in theory, right? Like I don't know any of this stuff. Nobody's talked to
even buy-sell agreements. What happens if someone dies? What happens if someone gets disabled? Right. Yeah, what happens if someone's married? Does their spouse inherit the business, or is there life insurance to allow the other owner to buy out the spouse? Do you really want to work with your business partner's husband or wife? Right. Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
Probably not.
Talk to me about, I know that you said you guys were best friends, which is so cool and so fun. How do you, if you do, I would like to hear the experience of building that together, but also how do you keep friendship, business?
It's so funny. Like it's interesting. It hasn't even been an issue. So we just celebrated our 20-year friendship anniversary.
Oh, that's amazing. I know. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. We were thinking, because I think platonic relationships should absolutely be celebrated like romantic relationships.
I'm going to tell you right now, I have my friend Declutter, who somebody recently just asked me. Lisa Regoli yesterday met with her. She's a community member. And she was like, I can't believe you and Dee are going on 18 years of friendship. And she was just in Naples with me because she celebrates everything I do. And likewise, me, her. But I take her with me. And she tells me, we're driving back. And she's like, what are we going to do for our 20th? We should go on a trip. I said, absolutely. And I told Lisa, she's my soulmate. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
So I agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
I agree with you.
100%. When we will have to do a trip, because it was just like,
that's awesome.
It was a little crazy.
That's awesome.
But when we were college roommates, and we would sit in our little dorm. We had one dorm together, and we would like talk across our beds and be like, one day we should start a business together, not knowing we were going to go to law school, not knowing we were going to end up in the same area of law. Like it all just happened. And it's funny because we talk all day long, which I'm like, life hack, just talk with your friend all day long and get paid to do it. This is amazing. And talk about like interesting things and work on things together. But like literally there's days I'll call her like 8 times and I'm like, I think we're becoming codependent, but like in a very good way. Like in a very good way. I don't mind it at all. And then I'll still call her after work and she's like, this is insane because we still have things to talk about. Right. But I think because our friendship was always very open about money and about everything behind the scenes, it was just so seamless, and our experiences are a little different. So we get to add different things to the matters that we work on. It's just been, I don't know. I don't even have words to describe it. It's amazing. Just been incredible.
That is amazing.
It's so
I love that.
It's so fun.
I would love to get into business with you. I love that.
Do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to like, it's not always a good idea.
Sure. No.
You know, but
well, partnerships are tough. And, I mean, anything relationship based is tough, course, right? Yeah. Marriage, children, friendships, all of it. Yeah. All of it is tough.
Humans being human.
Right. What is your best piece of business advice you've ever received?
The best piece of business advice. I think it would just be just do it. Whatever it is that you want to do, figure out the steps to get to where you want to go. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Don't hold yourself back. Don't limit yourself. And a lot of, I mean, so much of the advice that I have and where I am today is because of my therapist and her telling me, do it. Why can't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it? Like, almost like, what are you talking about? You know, I think that was some of the best advice that I've received. Don't let fear hold you back. Don't let society hold you back. Don't let your current I mean, be smart about it.
Sure.
I didn't just walk out of my job one day with $0. And I mean, some people do that and they go on to be billionaires. So it's not that it's just, for me, I'm a little more conservative and I'm a Capricorn, I'm a planner, you know. I think that's probably the best advice I've been given.
I feel like it's almost like move out of your own way a little bit, right? And which is what you did. There's always riskier people that make it and do that, but I would agree, that's really good. So I started this. My industry is super supportive with mentorship and things like that. So I always like to ask the question because I feel like there's people that start in business because they have a dream but don't have a path, don't have a community. Like you said, you got to find your own community. Sometimes you got to make it. What advice would you have for a new business owner that hasn't found their community yet and needs to and maybe just can't seem to find it?
Yeah. I mean, it took me, I've now practiced law 12 years. It took me until the year I started my law firm, a year and a half ago, to find it. I did not have it for I had friends. I had my wonderful husband, but I didn't have a community. I didn't even really know like what that was, honestly. So I think it's just meeting people, being open, talking to people. I mean, the Daily Drip, the whole way I got to that was like I was just at my chiropractor. She invited me to a mom's group. Nicole Cumberbatch was at the mom's group. And I was like, hey, I just started my law firm last week. Like, who should I meet? And she's like, go to this Daily Drip info session. I'm like, I don't know what the words that you're saying mean.
But okay.
But and I didn't think to myself, oh, I don't have time. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, that I don't know what that is. I just thought someone who seems like they know what is going on and they seem really cool recommended something to me. And I just took a chance. And I walk in a room and Romy's sitting there. This was like a year and a half ago, so that wasn't as big as it is now. She's sitting in a room. Nicole Mastrangelo was on the Zoom because her son was sick. And I'm just like, oh, I thought it was going to be like a big room of people. I'm like, what is this? Who are you? Why am I here? I drove to Nova for what? Yeah. Like, just don't get in your own way. Be open to opportunities. Be open to meeting people, even if you think they have nothing to do with your business, nothing to do with your industry. Just build relationships, and it'll come. And I mean, if you're in South Florida, always reach out to either of us because I know we're both involved in some very cool communities.
Absolutely, and I think really, it's tied to mindset. Right, of like being open to the opportunities, saying yes to things, and there comes a point in your career where then you have to evaluate, right? Like, am I saying yes to too much?
Right.
I think that's also a piece that's always missed. It's like also evaluating what you're investing your time in, so for example, people always talk to me like about the Daily Drip. I'm obviously super passionate about it. I told Nicole and Romy, I mean, I'm never leaving unless you guys kick me out. Like, I absolutely
I said the same.
I love it, and you know what? I don't view it as a business organization. I'm not there to grow my business. I'm there to grow myself. Like that is something that I do for Ciara. And that's why it's so important to me. And I feel like it's interesting because I feel like I never realized that I needed it.
Yeah, me either. I had no idea.
And I think this journey of doing this made me realize, oh, there's a lot that you need personal and professional, support with as an individual.
Right.
And especially as a woman.
Yeah. As an individual, as a woman, as a business owner, as someone who is building something where my experience was a lot of people around me didn't understand and they almost wanted to like grab my feet and pull me back down, not out of anything other than love, I hope.
And fear for you.
And fear. And everyone, your brain wants to keep you safe, your people in your life, but you have to have people who are ahead of you, who are smarter than you, and who are cool to help you in the journey.
And who are willing to share, right? Which is the critical part of the Daily Drip is that there is nobody that holds their failures or the successes, their struggles to their chest.
No, I cry like every
time.
I'm not a very emotional person. I've become more emotional since I've had kids, but something happened. I don't know. I have a soul apparently. I discovered it. But I cry all the time because it's just real. It's real life. People being super open about what they're going through, and it's what I need. I didn't know I needed, and I really needed it.
I agree. I think that's it's also important to, like, when you're in this phase of growing your business and all you think about is your business. I think that especially for me in like these last 2 years where I've been doing so many things outside of my comfort zone. That I almost don't recognize myself. I tell my friend D, I was like, I feel like owning this business has literally changed my DNA.
Yeah.
I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And then it's lonely. It's lonely. And so that the Daily Drip has given me a community of people that I can sit here and call Lauren the day that I messed up with my biggest client, right? What do I do? How do I fix it? How do I get over it? How do it's that space of, and I think my favorite part about it is that we have found a space too where you could talk about these things and it doesn't discredit you as a professional. Right.
It almost makes you seem more trustworthy because you're like, this is what's happening and I'm human, and everyone in the room's like, something like that happened to me
Been
too.
there.
It's not like everyone just trying to act like we're all perfect
Never
and
happened.
buttoned up. And because I think in professional settings that so often happens, and it's so dangerous because then you think when you mess up you're the only one, and then you tailspin. Been there many times.
Been there
many times.
Been there also many times. This has been incredible.
I know.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable. I love episodes like this because this is the kind of value that I want to give people, because again, this is, even with the support of my industry and having really good mentors and all that stuff, it's still just difficult. It's difficult. And so tell everybody where they can find you.
Absolutely. So I'm really on Instagram all the time. That's where I live. So at Lawyer Lauren Klein is my kind of main Instagram. At Wealthy Lawyer Squad is my squad coaching Instagram. And at Flourish Law Group is my law firm. Also at, flourishlawgroup.com is our law firm. And there's lots of info on there. And it's a fun website. We tried to make it fun. We're like, law firm websites are boring. We don't want to be boring.
I love that. I honestly, we're going to end it here, but also you are different. You've definitely done a good job of, I haven't met your partner, but you guys, you yourself and your Instagram game is great, but you can,
Thank you.
And I think because the area of law that you're in is so heavy, you guys do a really good job of being humanizing it and just being yourselves. And I love that.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
I'm going to go to your website to see it. So I can't wait. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
You're definitely coming back.
Yay.
Oh, last question. What's the best book about mindset you've read that we can read? What do you think?
So many good ones. I mean, I thought Think and Grow Rich was really, really great. Right now, I'm rereading A Simple Path to Wealth, which is more about practical money, but there is mindset in there. I'm also obsessed with anything Amanda Francis, anything. So her programs, and she has a book, Rich AF, that is, I don't know, there's something, just whatever she does is magical.
Oh, I haven't heard of her. So.
It's just so good.
Okay.
It's really good. I would highly recommend that one. And then on another one on the money side is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm not like, whatever, some of the things of him, I'm not like a super big fan of, but the book is so good because
book.
it really brings you to asset versus liability, and it helps you to figure out like how to become wealthy.
Right. There's a game too. I've played the game once.
I want to get it for my kids.
Yeah, I think that's a good intro level just to break the barrier on like playing it safe in a career.
Yes.
That's the first book that I read that actually kind of just highlighted the fact that like the dream is a fraud. Playing it safe in a career, having a 401k, like it's limiting actually. There's so much more you can do. So super good. Thank you.